we do a quick intro and we're off. All right. Jamie, you good?
Yep, good.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Culinary Now podcast. I'm Matt Britt.
And I'm Jamie Schick.
And today we are joined by a good friend, Christine Gagnon, and she is the founder of the Uncanoonuc Foraging Company and also the founder of the New Hampshire Mycological Society. Basically, you just make mushrooms more approachable to everyone, which I love. You lead classes, you lead hikes, you live my dream, which is to spend your life in the woods. And I think we are so excited to talk to you, to talk all things mushrooms, because as chefs, and maybe it seems easy for me to talk about how mushrooms are important to the savory chef, but I think Jamie loves the idea of sweet and savory as well.
I do.
Mushrooms are so critical to what we do. They're packed with umami flavor, and we just want to learn so much about what you do and how you sort of approach or fell in love with the fungus. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. It's exciting to be here, actually, and meeting you guys at class and now having this opportunity is great. Thanks for having me.
I just remember, so Christine, for those listening, she led a class in the fall that me and some colleagues here at Johnson & Wales did, and we went into it being like, this is going to be like a breeze. And then halfway through, we started looking at each other and everyone's like, Matt, what did you get us into? It's like it was like a Latin crash course. It was intense, but so rewarding. But, it's interesting. You start, these classes, or you run these classes, and, they're all about mushrooms, but your background actually is in education, correct?
Yes. But it's more specifically art education.
Okay.
So I went to Mass Art many, many years ago and had a dual major in photography and art education. But obviously, I think that whatever principles you're teaching, you're using to teach art, you can use to teach anything. So, education is education. But so I just feel like whatever I'm doing in my life, that education aspect always just comes in to play.
Being educators ourselves, we love talking about education, but I'm curious how this then turned into mushroom foraging and your love of mushrooms. How did you get from point A to point B?
Yeah. So, boy, I'm going to try to not make it a long story. When I was so it's funny. When I was at the end of third grade,
we're going way back.
We're going to go way back. My family moved. My father was Canadian, and my family moved to Canada, and we lived with my grandparents on their farm. They had cows. They had a horse. They grew vegetables in the garden. They had a maple sugar cabin, the whole thing. And down the road, there was a long driveway into the woods with this log cabin, and there was a family there that had moved from, I think, somewhere in Eastern Europe or maybe Scandinavia. My father wasn't ever really sure. But anyway, the oldest daughter was my babysitter. She would babysit us. And I remember one time walking in, and there were mushrooms on the center of the table, and they were all very colorful. And I remember Patricia being so excited to tell me that they had found these in the woods and that they were mushrooms and that they were going to eat them and that they were going to be so delicious. And that image just always stuck in my head. So fast forward to one of my children having a birthday party, and we went for a hike on Uncanoonuc Mountain, actually, on one of the Uncanoonics, and saw this sort of a snowball looking mushroom on the side of a tree. And I became sort of obsessed, like, what is this? And I took pictures and then started posting pictures and then started figuring out what it was. And then I started noticing more mushrooms. And then in 2018, it was an insane year for mushrooms. And you couldn't help but not see mushrooms. They were everywhere. So I wanted to learn. And started joining groups on Facebook to learn about them. And actually, there's a woman in town. I need to, Retta McGregor. She was always referred to as the mushroom lady in town. So we would sit outside of Apotheca here in downtown Goffstown outside and have mushrooms on the table and talk about them. And she would teach me a little bit about them. And now we bring her mushrooms when we find them. So it's kind of exciting. But so from there, I just joined a bunch of forums and started learning from different people online. And I had found mentors, and then, started going on group forays with the Boston Mycological Club so that I could learn things. And it kind of just went from there. I jumped in with both feet and went a little bit crazy with it. And then it became not just about what you could eat, but all the mushrooms and what their function is in nature, but then also the impact that on a greater scale, how important mushrooms are to the health of the whole planet, really.
So you were saying how you saw this like brightly colored basket of like mushrooms, and to me, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about like growing up, and you would see like cartoon mushrooms, or you think like Alice in Wonderland, and or like growing up in New Hampshire, we would have like those big like snowball like puff mushrooms, and I remember just being like, oh, my parents being like, you can't eat those are poisonous. So was it like scary learning about and like picking your first mushroom and then actually eating it and being like, am I 100% certain this is okay to eat? Because I would be scared.
Yeah, so obviously the rule of thumb is always, unless you can 100% identify something confidently on your own, you really shouldn't be eating it. But then the other thing is, I sometimes would be comfortable eating stuff myself, but then wouldn't be comfortable cooking it for somebody else or suggesting that somebody else eat it. So there's these sort of different levels, like, I'll take this risk, but I'm not going to pass this on to you. Even though in my mind I knew it was okay, for certain mushrooms, I was just like, yeah, I mean, I know it's okay, but still, let's just not,
Mm.
you know?
No, that's
So,
smart. That's smart. As someone
yeah.
who's never foraged, like that's good advice.
It's important.
Exactly. And the important thing to know too is that you can touch any mushroom safely. You know this now, Matt, is that any mushroom can be touched.
And you can taste any mushroom, just don't swallow it. Like,
Exactly. We do the taste and spit because sometimes how mushrooms taste help us figure out what species they are.
And I want to get to this a little bit later. I want to get to those mushrooms that you don't want to touch because, you said something like Alice in Wonderland, and I think about Mario mushrooms and the things that maybe we relate as mushrooms as kids might be not the best for you. And there are certainly, Christine, now, after taking your class, like I know, like there are certain things I'm probably just not going to taste regardless because I can identify it as no good. Right. But let's go back to the good stuff for a second because you mentioned, 2018 being a great year. And I think just the Northeast in general, obviously depending on the time of year, spring, summer, obviously into the fall, abundant for mushrooms. And now, once you dive in, everywhere you go, you just see them, right? What are, for those listening who might be sort of like taking the first step into foraging and wanting to get more into it, like what should they be looking for in this area of the country? Like what are some of the more common things that you want to find, you should eat that's available?
So I've been thinking about this question because the list could be long, right? But really, it could also be really short if you want to keep it easier, So I think the easiest things are like chanterelles, but people are going to say that chanterelles have, deadly lookalikes or poisonous lookalikes. And then black trumpets, which really don't really have a lookalike. And they're really, these are all choice edibles that, in my opinion, are really easy to identify, right? So chanterelles, black trumpets, oysters. Although oysters can sometimes be a little bit tricky because there are other guild mushrooms that will grow off of trees or dead wood or whatever. Hen of the woods in the fall, and chicken of the woods.
Yes.
So I'm using all common names instead of Latin, so people I don't know why.
I
Just
know.
because.
And thank you, because just hearing the Latin in a previous time makes you sweat. But like, and you throw out like hen of the woods. I think that that's something that you don't even have to go into the woods for. Sometimes in your front yard, you'll see a huge hen growing on the base of an oak tree. It's like, it's inspiring, and it's such a cool find.
Well, yeah, and a lot of these mushrooms you can find anywhere, not necessarily in the woods. So, and that brings up a whole other topic of, urban foraging and food for people in cities who maybe find stuff in parks. And then, then there's always the question of, but are pesticides or whatever being used? Or, is that stump in the front yard the one that the dog uses to relieve itself? And so do you want that,
Good.
has it relieved itself on the mushroom? Do you want, so,
Yes.
there's things to think about. But yeah, you can find mushrooms, just anywhere. I drive, my head's on a swivel. I'm always looking for mushrooms when I'm driving. It used to be kind of dangerous, probably, but
Maybe still, but yeah, I do the same thing. I do the same thing.
drive-by foraging, we call it. Yeah.
Would you
Or
would
what
you
was
be worried? Would you be worried about like animal contamination out in the woods as well, or not as much?
not as much. Yeah, no. I don't know if dogs behave differently than maybe coyotes.
Hmm.
I don't know if coyotes have stumps. Yeah, I don't know. No, I guess I don't think about it. But always wash your mushrooms,
Yes.
regardless, right? So that's
So
not a bad thing to
when
do.
we are foraging, is there like an app or a book you bring with you, or besides taking your class, which I've heard is super educational, but is there anything we can take with us into the woods when we're foraging that can help us identify safe or unsafe mushroom varieties?
Yeah, there are. Oh, I wish I had brought that book with me. I don't know if this is it here. Hold on. We'll have to edit that
It,
out. Nope, I don't have it. So the thing with me at this point is that I use so many genus specific books, if that makes sense. So, like, I
yep.
have a book that's just for boletes, which boletes not a genus, but whatever. So maybe not genus is the wrong word. Sort of types of mushrooms. So, like, boletes is one, or I have a book that's just polypores. I have a book that's just for amanitas. So, because that's, but if you're just starting out, there are some nice small pocket guides that you can use. The one thing I will say is to be very careful that you're not buying an identification book written by AI or Chat GBT,
Oh
Mm.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, we're seeing
GPT
that in education
because
a lot.
yeah, we're running into a lot of problems with that. People are buying books and they're showing them to me, and the information is wrong. The identifications are wrong. It's actually dangerous. I think there was recently a case of somebody who used one of those books and ended up getting sick
Yeah.
because he, ate a mushroom based on the information in the book and it was incorrect.
See,
So,
and I want to talk about that because I feel like whether it's a book or whether it's sort of a social media chat group, to which I know there are a ton, right? I see people using that information, not necessarily for what to eat, but rather like, oh my God, my dog ate this, or I ate this, like, and I'm feeling really sick. Like, what should people avoid? Like, is the best way to know what to avoid using those social media, whether it's through Facebook or whatever groups? Or are there some clear distinctions when you're walking through the woods? If you see something, you're like, don't touch this.
well, remember, you can touch.
Yeah. Figuratively,
um,
don't like stay away, stay away.
so, yeah, so that's interesting. I never thought of that before. Like a book that would be specific to here's a book about mushrooms not to consume or not to eat.
Mm.
But the truth is that the number, let me say this right, the percentage of deadly mushrooms in the world compared to based on the number of species in the world is tiny. Like it's not even 1% of mushrooms. But the problem is that they're not rare. I mean, they would seem rare because the number's small, but they occur frequently in the woods around us. So, things like, white just to be very general, white amanitas or amanitas in general, if you don't understand amanitas and which ones are good or bad. I mean, there's like thousands of species of amanita. Some are very edible and some will kill you. I mean, no joke, right?
Yeah.
New kidneys, new liver, if you're lucky. Um, and they're beautiful. They're the most gorgeous mushrooms to look at. And the Mario mushroom, the Amanita muscaria mushroom, is beautiful. It's sort of like this quintessential. Everybody know when I say to somebody, you know, the Mario mushroom. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. We know that
Yeah.
mushroom, right? It won't kill you, but it's not going to make you feel good if you just eat it. You know, you're
Mm.
going to be not good for a little while, but you'll survive. You know. But then there's, you know, Galerina that grows on wood that looks like enoki,
Yes.
and it's called funeral bells for a reason, right? Or the deadly Galerina, you know. Um, yeah, so sometimes there are books that will have lookalikes. And so if you're looking at something, it can say, you know, these are the lookalikes and this is what you want to be careful for. But really, it just goes back to that rule of comfort level and feeling,
Mm.
you know, feeling 100% that you know how to identify this. Sometimes there's times I see Galerina or something that might be Galerina. In my mind, even if it might be Galerina, then I'm not eating it, you know? So,
And I think what you're talking about now, if you know type deal, right? If you know what a Gallerine is, you might be more familiar with that. But let's go back to something that people probably, no matter who's listening, knows, which is the mushrooms that you see, at every supermarket, right? There is a distinction between what you find in the woods and what you see at the grocery store.
yeah.
And like, I'm of the persuasion, maybe because of you, that what you see at the grocery store, there ain't that much variety there. There ain't that much difference there. And yes, it's very safe, but it's also not very reflective of the scope in which mushrooms can bring to the sort of culinary scene. Wait, what, like, are people getting hosed at the grocery store? Like, what's the deal with this?
They are. They are. So, what a lot of people don't realize is that, you know, a lot of people don't realize that, you know, your baby Bella mushrooms or your white button mushrooms or your cremini mushrooms or your portobello mushrooms are all the exact same species of mushroom, just at different stages of growth.
With different
So,
light and yeah.
I mean, maybe texture will change a little bit, but it is what it is, you know? So if you don't like one, you're probably not going to like the others. Um, and you know, and by selling, you know, by calling it, oh, we're going to call it portobello, it sounds exotic and Italian, and you know, we can charge more, and you know,
It's very American. It's like just such like a, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but I also mean it in a bad way. It's like very like I it doesn't surprise me.
yeah, right. Yes. And then the other thing though is sometimes now you'll start to see like wild mushroom mixes in the grocery
Mm,
store. Have you seen those?
I
And there
have
might be like really sad looking
oysters.
oysters of different colors and maybe like a shiitake in there or a couple other things. And and actually this brings up an interesting point, which is when I go to restaurants and they tell me like they have a dish with wild mushrooms in it, I always ask them what they are. And they're
Yes,
always going to be like, oh, well, it's got like shiitake and it's got oysters and and they're like listing all of these mushrooms because they're grown, you know, they're farmed, which is fine, you know, which
yeah.
is great because you can grow mushrooms, but they're not wild. If you haven't picked them in the wild, they're not wild, you know?
The thing that bugs me the most about that is not the fact that they're combining all these, so-called wild mushrooms, which might not be. It's that people are then dumping that all into a pan at the same time, and those mushrooms all cook differently. They all have
Yes.
different like
Yeah.
masses, and they all and to me, that's like it looks pretty in a package.
Yes. They have different water content and they have different, yeah. So it's going to
Yes,
be, yeah. So it's all going to be different. I know. I know. Yeah. So, and then, so if people say, so many people say to me, oh, you forage for mushrooms, you know, and they're like, Yeah, I don't like mushrooms. I think they're gross, or I think they're, they just, and I say, have you only ever had mushrooms from the store? And they'll say,
Bingo.
yeah. And and there are so many, it's been amazing to taste how many different tastes and textures there are of mushrooms out in the woods. It's crazy, how different they all are when all you've ever had is the kind in the store, in the grocery
A-
store.
Amen.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think that the grocery store mushrooms, it does make them accessible to people
For
if
sure.
Yeah.
they don't have the time or the resources to go out and forage, but I totally agree. We have a colleague who used to forage a lot and would bring in the excess, and they he would give them to me, and they were like so delicious. And I love mushrooms. But I don't like white button mushrooms myself. I just find them
Yeah.
like boring. But do you ever find when you're out foraging, do you ever find like magic mushrooms or anything that's going to make you hallucinate? Is that something that comes up?
This podcast will
Well,
not be used against you.
yeah. It's funny because I was on NAMA, which is the North American Mycological Association. Actually, I have their T-shirt on, and their Instagram page. And I don't know who this person is. I haven't figured it out yet, but they have somebody who makes these hilarious reels about that. And like he's talking to himself here and he's a different character here. And it's back and forth where he's telling somebody, I forage for mushrooms. And the guy goes, "Oh, you forage for mushrooms." Like clearly the other person thinks it's magic mushrooms. So, and he's like, "No, really, it's just mushrooms." It's just hilarious because everybody, when they hear that you're into mushrooms, they all just assume, "Oh, you got some of the magic mushrooms."
Mm.
So, yes, I find them. It's sort of secondary. If I find them, it's kind of fun to say, "Oh, look, look what I found." But it's not my it's not my main focus. For some
Yeah.
people, it is. It's kind of funny because the compound in those mushrooms is psilocybin, and I found, and the genus for most of them is psilocybe. And my friend Kim called me one day. She says, "I found this huge patch of psilocybe somewhere. You got to come. You got to come." And so we went and like picked all these mushrooms. They were staining, and we had them all, and then we posted them to see if we could figure out what exact species they were, because there's tons of different species of psilocybe mushrooms. And it turned out that it was like the only species in the genus psilocybe that actually did not have psilocybin in it.
Oh,
And so we were so we were laughing. Um, it was just sort of fun and funny because there's not as much of that up here in New Hampshire as there
right.
is down south. And so it was just sort of fun to find something and then to find out it didn't have anything in it anyway. Um, but there are
Yeah,
other mushrooms that have it. Yeah.
there are,
Are,
and I could like see you being like I picture you as like a young adolescent, like trying to sell that the same way someone would sell like a bag of oregano in place of something else. Like, no, it's real. It's real. You can have it. No,
But
but
what's funny in a lot of these cases is that people convince themselves that they're feeling some sort of a trip and really nothing's happening, but it's supposed to be happening. So that you know what I mean?
yeah,
yeah,
Like,
yeah. It's like the placebo effect.
yes, exactly.
Are
Yeah.
there any rules against or any laws about certain types of mushrooms you can or can't forage for, or is that like just a free for all?
Yeah, no, you can forage whatever you want. I
just
mean,
whether
it's
you
good
can
to be
sell it.
responsible,
Yeah.
Um, but you can't sell them unless you're licensed. But you can forage, whatever. It has to be on land where it's allowed. It's also like, where you're foraging is usually
Mm-hmm.
more,
Hmm.
you know, stuff like that. So,
So I want to talk a little bit and shift gears just to some, I mean, we could talk about mushrooms forever, and we're going to have you back to maybe go on a deep dive maybe in the spring, like we could do some morel thing or whatever.
Oh
But
yeah.
like I know part of your thing is, when you're in the woods, you're not just looking for mushrooms. You're big into hunting and trapping, and and also consuming, kind of the whole beast or the whole animal. And I think that's something that we extend to our students, and we say that it's somewhat responsible to not just waste, an animal to only get the best parts. Can you talk a little bit about some of your like trapping and how you prepare some of those? I would want to say less sexy parts, but arguably equally delicious.
Yeah, so I don't actually trap, but I have friends that do, and was given beaver a few times last year, which I never imagined I would eat. But you know what? It was really good, like a whole roasted or beaver stew, or it's very tender, falls off the bone, and it was really nice. And I actually have the tails and the hides still in the freezer because at some point I'm planning on um, fleshing them out, and I don't know, maybe I'll make a hat. I don't know. We'll see. um, and hunting, I grew up hunting with my dad and my uncles and my grandfather in Canada, in Quebec. But I haven't in years and years until this is my first year. I did start turkey hunting a couple of years ago with my friend Liz. But this is the first year that I've really done a lot of fishing and hunting with my friend Hugh, who's sort of taken me under his wing to teach me the ways. And but it all started because my friends Liz and Savannah were convincing us, and I totally see it, to get on what's called the roadkill list. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you guys have that where you are, but we have a roadkill list. So if there's somebody hits a deer and the police get called, there's a list of people to call to come and take that deer away or whatever animal it might be. So that's just been really an incredible learning experience to pick it up, to learn how to dress it, and then later to process the whole thing and to cut the meat down into steaks and stew meat, and save meat for hamburger, whatever, do all of it. Heart, we eat the heart. The heart's delicious.
Yes.
Yes, love the heart. But what I want to try moving forward too is working with the caul fat, because to make like sausages and stuff.
Mm.
I never even knew what that was until I started doing this, and it's really beautiful. Um, and I'm reading that it's really tasty and buttery almost too.
It
So
it like melts. It melts on it. It keeps it enclosed like a sausage would, but then it kind of like just melts into it. So it's amazing.
yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to try. And so the most exciting call I got was a couple months ago for a bear. And that was crazy. That was like, they were like, so we have some, but it's not a deer, it's a bear. Do you want a bear? And I was like, hell yeah, I want a bear. So, um, went down, loaded it in my truck. We have sort of this network of people. We all help each other out with this sort of thing. So I met my friend Matt at my friend Savannah's, and he helped me clean it out, like dress it, because I'd never done that before. And then it hung there for a while, and then I went back like a week or two later and skinned it, and then processed it. And the meat was so incredibly marbled and tender. I could have cut it with a butter knife. It was
Wow.
insane. And we had our first bear stew the other day, and it was amazing. I couldn't believe how tender the meat is, and how delicious. So it was really great. And we ate that heart as well. Um, I can't remember the name of the dish. I don't know if you remember the name of the dish that
Yeah. Anticucho.
yes.
Yep.
So my friend from Panama suggested that I do that with it, and then you guys also suggested. I was like, okay, well, that's what we have to do, I guess. And it was so delicious.
And
Yeah.
that's like, so I know it from like sort of the Peruvian influence, but yes, heart anticucho grilled with a little bit either of chimichurri or any kind of sauce. Really, it's just and it's one of those things that it can be hard to talk about because when you start talking about eating, like, people can already get squeamish when you talk about eating animals in any sort of detail, right? And then you start talking about eating like tongue and then kidneys and then heart, and people are like, oh, but it's really fucking good. And it's like, so it's something we don't celebrate enough in my mind as far as like training young chefs is that it's not a recommendation to use the whole animal. It should be like a sort of a requisite, a requirement to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, like, my friend Savannah puts the liver at a certain percentage too in her ground meat, so that when she makes
Mm-hmm.
sausage, there's liver in there, which is incredibly healthy. And she needs the iron, and all that stuff too. So there's a great health benefit there as well. Um, and yeah, so heart for me is also brand new. When I was working at a restaurant last year, my chef was from China, and he would make his own meals back there, when he wasn't cooking meals for out front, and food that he was bringing from home. And he would always, give me a dish of whatever. And I said, "What is it?" And he said, "Oh, it's pork heart." And I was
Mm.
like, huh, okay, I'll try anything once, And I took a bite, and I was blown away at the taste and the texture of heart.
Yeah.
I'm like, why are more people not eating this, And I've had tongue, and so yeah. And again, with the bear, I have the whole hide in my freezer, just waiting to be fleshed. So, and because I'm crazy that way, we save all of the skulls, and we get all the skulls cleaned out, and
Yep.
whatever. I actually had somebody message me the other day to ask me if I was keeping that skull or if they could buy it. So
Everything's for sale for the right
everything's
price.
for sale, right? And I
No,
said, no, this one's for me, but I have a friend who has some.
you're not crazy.
Um,
You're not crazy.
Yeah. So one interesting thing I wanted to just mention really quickly, back to the education aspect. The one thing that you guys kept saying in class, which I thought was really great, is and I should mention too that when I do teach these classes, it's I'm teaching for Mushroom Mountain. They're the ones that have set up this whole program for many states to be able to teach certification. And I love, this is my first year that I've taught those, and I love it.
Mm.
And but you guys kept saying, I feel like the tables have turned, and I'm having insight into how our students, especially our freshmen, feel sitting in the classroom being bombarded with all of this information.
Yep.
And I thought that was great too, because sometimes you learn not just what you're there to learn, but other things. So
Full circle for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Well, speaking of this education piece, I know that in a few months you're going to be joining us at the FiT Symposium.
yes,
And do you want to talk a little bit about the class that you're going to be putting on for us?
yeah, we're gonna talk about some of the basic mushrooms again, and the different ways to identify mushrooms, because there's so much to look at, and
Hmm.
there's no rule book that you follow for all of them. They all have their own rules, and we're gonna talk about, I think, also much like preservation after you pick a mushroom.
Yes.
What's the best way to keep it fresh? Because I think different mushrooms too have different um, protocol. I don't know if that's the right word,
No,
but
it
different,
is. Yeah.
you know. And then for cooking as well, like mushrooms that have a higher water content. Do you want to cook that water off?
Yep.
Um, so there's a lot of different approaches. And like porcini, if you're picking porcini, that doesn't last so long. So you almost want to use that right away. And the other thing I think, because I have some chefs here that I work with, and I think one thing that people don't realize too is that you can dehydrate mushrooms and have mushrooms all year in your
Yep.
cooking. Like if you can't use them fresh, or you can dehydrate them and powder them and use them for seasoning. You can use the ends of the mushrooms that you're not cooking with to make mushroom broths. There's just so many uses. But a fun thing also that I think I want to talk about, and I think this sort of just came into my head now, is there's actually mushrooms that people use for desserts, and I think that's a foreign concept for people, right? You're nodding though. So
I am all in on this topic.
yeah.
But
Yes.
we're going to keep the excitement looming, because if you want to learn all the things that you're talking about, especially the dessert component, you got to register for that FiT Symposium, which is on
Yes.
sale now to get access to Christine's class. So we're going to leave it there and let everyone just stew on the
Oh, come on. We're just getting into my area.
Listen, we got to cut it off somewhere, and like a typical savory chef, I'm going to cut it off before it gets to dessert. No, but this is one of those things that you're coming for this sort of crash course in basic mushroom ID and sort of just kind of understanding. But what you're going to get out of it in the partnership with JWU is that sort of food angle, and we're going to lean into exactly that topic on how to use them in a variety of ways, especially dessert. So we are looking forward to having you in February.
I can't wait. I'm excited.
Well, thank you for sharing all of this with us today, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you. Look forward to meeting you in person. I'll see you again.